I get so sorry for them that I can't be glad any longer. Of course we could be glad there were poor folks, because we could help them. But if we don't help them, where's the glad part of that coming in?" And to this Pollyanna could find no one who could give her a satisfactory answer. Especially she asked this question of Mrs. Carew. And Mrs. Carew, still haunted by the visions of the Jamie that was, and the Jamie that might be, grew only more restless, more wretched, and more utterly despairing. Nor was she helped any by the approach of Christmas. Nowhere was there glow of holly or flash of tinsel that did not carry its pang to her, for always, to Mrs. Carew, it but symbolized a child's empty stocking, a stocking that might be Jamie's. Finally, a week before Christmas, she fought what she thought was the last battle with herself. Resolutely, but with no real joy in her face, she gave terse orders to Mary, and summoned Pollyanna. "Pollyanna," she began, almost harshly, "I have decided to take Jamie. The car will be here at once. I'm going after him now, and bring him home. You may come with me if you like." A great light transfigured Pollyanna's face. "Oh, how glad I am!" she breathed. "Why, I'm so glad I want to cry! Mrs. Carew, why is it when you're the very gladdest of anything you always want to cry?" "I don't know, I'm sure, Pollyanna," rejoined Mrs. Carew, abstractedly. On Mrs. Carew's face there was still no look of joy. Once in the Murphys' little one-room tenement, it did not take Mrs. Carew long to tell her errand. In a few short sentences she told the story of the lost Jamie, and of her first hopes that this Jamie might be he. She made no secret of her doubts that he was the one. At the same time she said she had decided to take him home with her, and give him every possible advantage. Then, a little wearily, she told what were the plans she had made for him. At the foot of the bed Mrs. Murphy listened, crying softly. Across the room Jerry Murphy, his eyes dilating, emitted an occasional low "Gee! Can you beat that, now?" As to Jamie on the bed had listened at first with the air of one to whom suddenly a door has opened into a longed for paradise. But gradually, as Mrs. Carew talked, a new look came to his eyes. Very slowly he closed them and turned away his face. When Mrs. Carew ceased speaking, there was a long silence before Jamie turned his head and answered. They saw then that his face was very white, and that his eyes were full of tears. "Thank you, Mrs. Carew, but I can't go," he said simply. "You can't what?" cried Mrs. Carew, as if she doubted the evidence of her own ears. "Jamie!" gasped Pollyanna. "Oh, come on, kid, what's eatin' ye?" scowled Jerry, hurriedly coming forward. "Don't ye know a good thing when ye see it?" "Yes, but I can't go," said the crippled boy again. "But, Jamie, think what it would mean to you," quavered Mrs. Murphy at the foot of the bed. "I am a thinking," choked Jamie. "Don't you suppose I know what I'm doin', what I'm givin' up?" Then to Mrs. Carew he turned tear wet eyes. "I can't," he faltered. "I can't let you do all that for me. If you cared, it would be different. But you don't care, not really. You don't want me, not me. You want the real Jamie, and I ain't the real Jamie. You don't think I am. I can see it in your face." "I know, but " began Mrs. Carew helplessly. "And it isn't as if I was like other boys, and could walk, either," interrupted the cripple feverishly. "You'd get tired of me in no time, and I'd see it comin'. I couldn't stand it, to be a burden like that. Of course, if you cared, like mumsey here " He threw out his hand, choked back a sob, then turned his head away again. "I'm not the Jamie you want. I can't go," he said. With the words his thin, boyish hand fell clenched till the knuckles showed white against the tattered old shawl that covered the bed. There was a moment's breathless hush. Then, very quietly, Mrs. Carew got to her feet. Her face was colorless, but there was that in it that silenced the sob that rose to Pollyanna's lips. "Come, Pollyanna," was all she said. "Well, if you ain't the fool limit," babbled Jerry Murphy to the boy on the bed, as the door closed a moment later. But the boy on the bed was crying very much, as if the closing door had been the one that had led to Paradise, and that had closed now forever. Chapter 11.